Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here or watching online this evening. I call the February 12th, 2024 school board meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. We are in conference room C of the Fisher Administration Building at 12121 West North Avenue. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Dr. Hoyk? Here. Ms. Willis? Here. Dr. Worley?
Here.
Ms. Heimer-Rowland? Here. Mr. Meyer?
Absent.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Here. We have quorum, and so we will begin this evening with public comment. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, and staff members and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. However, following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into debate with a member or members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. We'll begin with public comment in the room and then move towards public comment outside the room. Before we begin, can I have everybody mute their computers, please? Okay. Dr. Hoyk, can you time? Thank you. You may begin.
You can start. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were getting organized. Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. I am here to talk about a few things here. If you recall, last August, there were several of us who provided public comment along with a written report to each board member about the ADA non-compliant issues with the lease agreement for the rec department. So if the community and people recall, we signed a lease for shy of $200,000, being responsible for taxes on that as well. And there were community members and a report done not only by Independence First, but by the district's own architectural firm, PRA, warning the board, take a pause before you approve this because there are ADA compliance issues and you didn't know the costs that would be incurred by the community to fix those things. So here we sit 6 months later and let's cheer for the positive. There is a sign put up in the parking lot, but where is all the rest of the compliance issues being completed? So tonight you're voting on capital improvement projects. It's disappointing to not see this. And it's honestly, for lack of a better word, it's like the 6 board members, minus Mr. Meyer, because I know he voted no on this, were thumbing their nose at federal law when you were told and willingly and intentionally voted for this, but yet we sit here 6 months later with the accommodations not being done. Regarding the capital improvement projects tonight, I really wish that we could get things in the available to the public more than 24 hours, because I know this was inserted late saying that the only change was $55,000 to remodel offices. But if somebody needs to explain the fund balance, because what was posted Friday or Saturday and what was posted today is certainly a difference of more than 55,000. So I don't get it. Lastly, there are many items on here that talk about ADA improvements. So I am asking the board that under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, as a entity, a public entity who accepts federal funding, you need to have an ADA transition plan. Where is that plan? How can the public see that and get that? And so it should be very clear from what's on this cap improvement project list, where those projects sit on the transition plan. So I really urge you to take
Ms. Phelps, Alec, your
serious
time is up.
consideration into following the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Bauer. I'm the president of the Eisenhower PTA, speaking officially on their behalf, as well as speaking as a parent of two Eisenhower students. When I first spoke in front of the school board in June, in June, Eisenhower was facing significant challenges. The markers of academic growth, literacy, and math proficiency at grade level had stagnated at a low level over the past decade or so. Indeed, with the complications related to the pandemic, the percentage of proficient students it trained had decreased. The markers of behavior, the number of times the classroom was disrupted, had been steadily increasing. Last year, with a building of just shy of 370 or so students, had more behavioral referrals than high schools 3 times their size. What's worse, academic success and behavioral records of our students could be predicted by the color of the student's skin, the amount in their parent or guardian's bank accounts, or their IEP status. Our staff morale was at an all-time low, and indeed 70% of our staff is new to the building this year. Our building had several significant problems, including broken bridges in our playground, leaks in our roof, and exterior doors that don't latch appropriately. We were upset, and rightly so. It was an unacceptable and untenable situation. We were failing our students, and we all had our part in that failure. Luckily, the district was in a position to help. Superintendent Means and Principal Mancani worked tirelessly and launched an investigation to help identify all potential sources of failure and generated plans to reverse the trends that had come to a head in 2023. Pinion and his team in Pupil and Family Services opened up positions in the building whose purpose it was to teach our students how to be human and engage in society. Marble and her team in academic performance opened up positions in the building to train and model highly effective teaching strategies to our teachers and to build the resources for students when they needed more direct interventions. Zolozowski and our HR team refilled the building with qualified and skilled staff and had done an excellent job of keeping that building full when the inevitable departures happened. Holland and our DEI team continue to make efforts and strides to close gaps based on race, socioeconomic status, and disability. Brightman and his finance and building and grounds teams continue to identify and fix building and structural problems. The data coming out of that building this year is unequivocally positive. Behaviorally, we are on a pace to have 300 fewer behavioral referrals this year, a decrease of 40%. Academically, our growth from fall to winter is remarkable and had not been seen in that building since we started tracking this data. We no longer have
15 seconds.
We no longer have a sinkhole in the north end of our parking lot, and our playground is, well, mostly safe.
Dombrowski. The anecdotes coming out of the building are also overwhelmingly positive. Our second graders told me that he feels safe in the classroom this year, something that was not true before. I've had one teacher confide to me that early in the year, they had a form of PTSD when they had a behavioral flare-up. The concern that no one was coming to help was so deeply embedded in their psyche, it caused angst until it was repeatedly demonstrated otherwise. I've had other teachers tell me that for the first time during their tenure, Eisenhower finally feels fully staffed. Everyone I've asked notes that the staff morale is significantly more positive, and the feelings exist to the point that volunteers have remarked on multiple occasions and independently of each other. In every facet I can keep track of, Eisenhower is making statistically and anecdotally significant gains. We see the work and effort being put in by our staff. We see how Eisenhower has become significantly a safer building, and we see how our students are learning and growing over the course of the year. But we now see that there's still more work to do. That said, Eisenhower is still not living up to the promise of the school board's North Star. Our number of behavioral referrals still leads the elementary schools in Wauwatosa. The symptoms and structures needed are literally still being developed and implemented. Our academic numbers for the grade level proficiency indicate that we are not fulfilling the promise that all students will achieve success academically. Our building still leaks. We have staff whose offices are literally a closet or a trailer, not even attached to the school. Our staff lounge still feels like a locker room it once was. Our educators do not have a school that allows them to provide the highest level of education. Our students' race, socioeconomic status, and neurodiversity continues to be closely tied to the academic and behavioral success experienced. There are exceptions to our goal of having every student achieve academic success. The solution on how to continue to close these gaps and bring reality in line with the school board's North Star is simple. Eisenhower needs more time at the current staffing levels, and it needs more resources to keep building up. For the past 3 months, our PTA has set aside significant amounts of meeting time to understand the fiscal situation of our state of the district. In January, the Eisenhower PTA leadership asked our community to take a stance. We allowed our members, our staff, and anyone else who expressed an interest in the success of Eisenhower to review the data and make a vote. The answer is not surprising, nor is the clarity at which it was made. 89% of us see the failure of the state legislature to keep school funding even with inflation. Indeed, if they had kept the inflation since 2009, we would not be having this conversation. The situation we are in is not a failure of the school board, nor of the iterations that came before you. The situation we are now in is because of the decisions that are made 75 miles away.
You are at time.
I'm Andrea Fisher. We at Eisenhower are willing to work to change that reality. More impressively, 93% of us like what we have going on at Eisenhower and are willing to do what we can to keep pushing to make that happen. We are willing to bear our fair share to support and fund the district, despite the state not doing so. We believe the school board should ask for what it needs to continue the forward progress it has made in the past year. It should ask for what it needs to give our teachers fair wages and workloads, to give our teachers the curricula and tools it needs to educate our students well, to provide a safe environment for our teachers and students, to make the Wauwatosa School District a district others look to as the example. We need you to be the leaders we elected you to be. We need you to ask for what you need to live up to your own North Star. We will do what it takes to support you in this endeavor. This is not politics. This is simply making the decisions needed to make the next generation have the tools needed to thrive. It is truly as simple as that.
Thank you. Impressive utilization of the handoff.
There's no more. Craig Griffey, I teach at East. I'm coming because there's a couple items on the consent agenda that pertain to my area. And I just want to let you know I was here if there's any questions about them. I'm here in strong support of them, if that's obvious. And I encourage you to vote for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Amanda Hibbard. I am an Eisenhower parent. This is my 4th year at Eisenhower. This is probably the first year I've actually had anything nice to say about Eisenhower or the district. My son is a special needs student who had 92 behavioral referrals last year. This year, he's at 8. He started the year in the 1 percentile for reading. He's now at 29. It is unheard of for him to actually come home and be excited and not getting phone calls every day because the teachers are frustrated and there's no help and they don't know how to help him anymore because it's a class size of 20 and all of the noise is so overstimulating for him. This class size as a 2nd grader is 15 and he is thriving. At a minimum, Eisenhower needs the staff that they have currently, if not more, so that there are more students that can have this success story that my child is finally getting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment in the room this evening?
Gary Sykes. I will piggyback off of what my colleagues from Eisenhower said. So I felt very alone coming into the district. I came from parochial schools and my kids, they're now in their 3rd year at Eisenhower. So it was very hard It felt like there wasn't a lot of help. I luckily found a lot of help within the PTA. I've reached out to many of you personally because I'm looking to get help, just like we are for our students to thrive. So seeing the start to change and in numbers and in behavior is truly what we've been needing for a long time. So I thank you. And again, looking for those efforts to continue. So thank you.
Thank you. Jamie, I'm gonna go online and see if there's anyone, and then I'll come back to the room and finish up.
There are no hands raised.
So we will close online comments for this evening. Any final comments in the room this evening? I want to thank you all for being here, for both advocating for your kids when you're frustrated, sharing and letting us know when we're doing things well, so that we can do more of them, and for your commitment to doing work. I think as a community, I have a lot of hope, and for how much people care about our Wauwatosa schools. And it's really great to see parents who are advocates. And we're in an era right now where a lot of people are really pro public education and a lot of people aren't really pro public education. So it's really nice to see when people step up and do advocacy in our community. Keep holding and pushing the board, the district to be excellent for every kid. We look forward to partnering with everybody who both is in the room and listening online tonight as well. You are welcome to stay, at least for the consent agenda, and then you can cheer if Mr. Griffey's item gets passed. If you don't know Mr. Griffey, he's a jewel, by the way. I need to follow up with you on some home improvement ideas. We will close public comment at this time. Next up is our consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none. Ms. Wills?
Internet is not having that work at this point. I don't have board doc in the whole night. Yeah, I don't have board doc. Me either.
May I have a motion to recommend that the school board approve the consent agenda?
Moved.
You've got to actually say that though.
May I have a motion that the school board approve the consent agenda?
I will accept your motion to approve the consent agenda. May I have a second? Thank you, Dr. Hoig. Any public comment or not public comment, any discussion on the consent agenda or questions from the board?
I just want to acknowledge, I can't pull it up, but the employee transaction, I know we had a number of retirees on this consent agenda and just wanted to thank those teachers and staff members for their hard work. You know, we talk about how we want to be this lighthouse district. And I do truly believe it is those teachers and staff members that have the most time with our children that make a huge difference. So I just want to thank them for their dedication. And even for some of the teachers on there who are resigning and leaving our district for other opportunities. I'm just grateful for the time that they have committed to our district and our children.
I want to call attention to a donation that's quite substantial from Totem Mechanical and J.M. Brennan. It's for in-kind commercial HVAC training materials of $10,000. And one of the things that often pops up on a consent agenda is folks donating a whole variety of things. Certainly local businesses, corporations do, community members do. I love when a community member donates a tuba or a variety of other things. And so thank you, in this case, to Total Mechanical and J.M. Brennan for this donation, but for so many different people who donate in big and small ways, time, talent, and resources to make our district better for our kids. It's greatly appreciated. If there's no other comments or questions from the board, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoig,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger.
Yes, and the consent agenda does pass. Everybody cheer for. Thank you, Mr. Griffey, for being here this evening and for your continued efforts. We will next move to strategic goal 6, operations. Action to approve capital improvement projects for 24-25. Dr. Worley.
I know this is me. I'm gonna have to kind of fly on it because my computer is totally
So
demonized tonight. I move that we approve as proposed the capital improvements 24-25.
thank you. I will accept that motion to approve the capital improvement projects for the 24-25 school year. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hammer Rowland. Do you want to give us a quick reset?
Recap?
Yeah.
Of course.
Is it
Um,
possible to also pull up the document from board docs on the screen, just because I think many of us are having computer issues?
Shut down. I've gotten back and ready to see you.
first time we're doing that. Do I do it from here or?
Email it to everybody.
Yeah, help, that would be great. Because it looks like our emails are working, so I think it must be board docs.
It's a board doc.
It's really laggy or something.
Just in my stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually just trying to bring the document up remotely and I'm having trouble logging into board docs as well.
Word docs is just saying diligent brand on. Diligent tonight.
Why don't I make a suggestion? Why don't we take a 5-minute recess? And I have it if you'd like to make copies from it. Outstanding.
okay?
Yep. Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Larson. We'll take a 5-minute recess quick, kind of get things settled up a little bit.
I'm not in my
Give board
email.
members
Not plugged in, so it's not gonna let me.
a chance to take a look and then we'll jump back in. Are we feeling ready? Seeing head nods, I think we will be back in session. Let's move back into. So we'll move forward.
All right, so I shared on, thanks to Corey's help, we shared on the screen for everybody. I'm Kevin LaFountain, for anybody that I haven't met besides my first time here. Mr. Brightman and I presented this plan to you at the previous meeting. The projects all comprise a list of improvements that are identified in the decision analysis that we've talked about before, that prioritized and gave projects and issues out there in all the buildings, rankings according to need. So those top of the list items are shown here. I think Mr. Brightman explained last time that while they do total over $2 million, the idea was to leave some reserves in the capital Fund 41 account. The other items that are shown in the shaded color with no cost necessarily next to them are either projects that we're still verifying design on and pricing, or like in the case of the Brookfield East boiler project, while it was identified as a priority need to take on, the costs are so exorbitant that there are no funds available, but it needs to be identified as something that's a huge issue out there. I heard a comment in the public comment about the office remodeling and the $55,000. I would like to answer the question on that, but I'm not really sure what the question was. So if anybody here has an idea what that was for, I can try and address it. Other than I can go into particulars about each project if you have any specific questions.
I had a general question. So the shaded areas, while they're identified as capital improvements for 24-25, does that mean that they will be addressed in 24-25?
That's a good question. I think what it really means is that we're going to address further study on them.
But not necessarily resolve what the issue is, like for instance, the pool basin at Longfellow.
Correct. So that project coincidentally have an appointment with an engineering firm next week to tour that pool and give it a condition assessment on that. They're important enough that we have to spend time investigating them further, coming up with an assessment of the condition, what that means to the operation of those facilities, and assign some prioritization toward it and inform you of what you're facing.
And then just since you did bring up the 55,000 for the update and Fisher. Could you just explain that a little more since it was not on the first presentation of this?
Sure. And I should have started off by saying that that is something different in addition to the fact that we sorted some of the categories to accurately identify what they were attributed to. The Fisher remodel was a project that was started before my arrival. Design and permitting work had already been accomplished before I came here. I just simply picked that up and had it bid out again. It addresses rearranging some offices through the finance and operations office down here and another office down in pupil services, I believe, to better and more accurately place staff where they're more effective. And that price is a real price. We had two competitive quotes come in that were in the vicinity of that dollar amount.
Thank you.
If I remember, it was the part of it was moving Ms. Holland closer to the team that she works with, correct?
Yes. Dr. Hoig.
Can you address the line item for the employee health clinic at West? Can you just tell us a little bit about what that money would specifically be used for?
Yeah. What I know about it up till now and working with Nick Kent and with Keith on that is it takes a portion of West where I believe Park and Rec used to be, and I believe the Champions program is there now. And my terminology is I'm still learning. It would make that purpose, that area, the health clinic to address some opportunities with the health insurance plan. And we would repurpose other spaces at West to accommodate Champions program or potentially East. There's some spots there. So that there is some preliminary conceptual design already out there, but we don't have enough yet to attribute definite costs, but that was an approximate dollar amount to give you an idea of the vicinity or where it could be, where it could land.
Ms. Emerald.
Are the, even if it's shaded with that sort of pink color, are the estimates included in that total number that we're voting on tonight, or would that come from the remaining?
So that total of 2.392 does include those estimates.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and East has the alt-ed improvements, which are a direct result of the health clinic.
Sorry, I have one more question. I know this might be more of a question for Mr. Brightman, who's not here, but maybe you can answer this, Dr. Means, on his behalf. So I can see what our current balance is in Fund 41, and we're obviously planning to use a large just over half of that for next year's capital improvement projects. How much money do we typically put into Fund 41 every year?
Depends on our financial situation and how much we have the ability to place in fund balance. The fact that we, for the last 2 years, utilized fund balance to address operating costs, our ability to put money into this Fund 41 is limited.
Okay. So these are big projects we need to do, sort of the high priority projects that we can afford right now, but certainly don't cover all of the work that needs to be done moving ahead.
Correct. I would categorize it. The analysis we did was a great tool because with limited funding and a large amount of projects, how do you decide where that limited money goes to? So we ranked it by needs with certain categories to fairly put the money where it really should go.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Morris.
Based on that decision analysis and kind of choosing these projects here, can you give us a percentage of how much is still remaining on that list of priorities that we did not get to?
Well over, do you want to? Well over 100 million. Okay.
This is a fraction of the dollar amount that we have to address from a deferred maintenance perspective.
Okay.
The projects of the $2,392,000, as Mr. Liscum has just shared with you, we are anticipating that there's at least approximately 100 million plus in terms of deferred maintenance that we have across the district.
So basically in there, in that decision analysis, we've kind of assessed kind of at that rate, but there's the dollars and cents we're talking about 2%, 3% of the grand scheme for where we are right now,
Yes,
for what we believe.
it's a very small.
Very small. Okay.
Any other questions from the board on this item?
I just, if I were a board member, I think the one that would stick out to me would be the office remodel at Fisher. And just so, and I'll defer to Mr. Pinion if he wants to weigh in more, but Miss LaShonda Holland is currently located in the Division of Academic Performance. That prevents her from working with our special education director, prevents her from working with Mr. Pinion closely, prevents her from working with our director of student success, who oversees our social workers and counselors. So she's in essence away from her core team. Also, from an administrative assistant standpoint, there's some challenges. Additionally, Dr. Marble and her team doesn't have the ability to have an opportunity to have teachers meet in their division. So while it may seem like this is a convenience or a nice to have, is actually an efficiency issue. And so that's why it's on the list of projects.
Thank you both for your thorough overview of everything. At this point, Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoig,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger.
Yes, and the capital improvement for 24-25 passes. Thank you all very much and good luck with all the RFPs.
Pertaining to a question from the audience, when we think about the going forward in the next capital improvement and the budgets for 25, 26, since we're talking about such a small percentage there, when we do get into those conversations and that decision analysis, we have to have the earmarks here for ADA compliance and those things. Is that an all-encompassing where we put that in? I see we had it broken down in places here for interior remodeling, ADA improvements, looking for a little more clarity and transparency on where the decision analysis comes into when we're talking about ADA specifically.
I think in the document that we provided, that we have received, with the update on the facility needs, it clearly identifies what the ADA improvements need to be and what our facility upgrades they need to be. That has been provided in that updated analysis of our facilities from the 2023, December of 2023 analysis by the architectural firm, Mr. Liscum and Mr. Brightman. And if we were able to get on board docs, there was an updated version of the document that was shared that actually broke out the ADA component of things. A board member shared with me that it would be more prudent for us to not lump interior remodeling and ADA improvements. So if board docs was diligent, we would have had the ability to see the breakout of the ADA, because I think there is, in fairness to our families and students with special needs, to identify where those ADA needs are. And I want to thank Kevin. No, you're fine. No, you're fine. Kevin did, he was very helpful, and he actually broke out in the document that's on board docs what's interior remodeling and what's ADA improvements. And so that when board docs is back up, you'll be able to see that because there was a request from the community for that breakout.
Thank you, Dr. Means.
Well, and I want to thank Ms. Emma Rollins. She was the board member who asked for that breakout. So thank her.
We will now move into board governance. A report from board delegate regarding the 2023 WSB Delegate Assembly. I am indeed your delegate. On board docs is the final kind of edited version of what was adopted. A quick rundown of this. When I was new to the board, I found this fascinating. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards gathers once a year at the state convention. And a delegate can serve from each school district across the state of Wisconsin. And WSB, in essence, has a platform that they support and they advocate for, and they have folks that are working on their behalf in Madison to be pushing and advocating for resources for schools, different policies that would be supportive of schools, encouraging adoption of those policies or creating or writing those policies. And the only things that they advocate for are those that have been adopted by the delegate assembly. So this is kind of the foundation of what policies, what values do we have organizationally, and that they're created and adopted as different resolutions. So each year, school districts can put forth updates or changes to the policy committee, then they're brought forth to the delegates, and everyone gets a vote. So you can vote or not, but there's an opportunity to do that. There's some discussion and debate. There's edits. Imagine a school board meeting with 500 people at it, 500 members. So it can be a bit of a hoot. So you have everything that was adopted and passed. I would say among the packet that was included, it was, I would say, modest changes or minor changes. There wasn't, some years there's a lot of excitement. This wasn't one of those years where there's any big changes. So things like stipends for cooperating teachers, of requesting being able to have those available, updates to special education policies, state specialty schools, seclusion and restraint policy changes, support for the Office of School Safety, classroom technology, and a variety of other items that are included in this. The one thing I thought that was to give you a sense of where we may be going, school board introduced or tried to reintroduce a policy that was ultimately not, was voted not to be taken up by the group on transgender students in high school athletics. Ultimately, the delegate assembly chose not to accept any requests to consider policy changes that were coming from the floor because they had not been available to school boards in advance, and delegates didn't want to vote on anything that they had not had a chance to consider with their school board. But otherwise, pretty minor amendments and changes. And you have in your hands everything that ultimately was adopted. If you get a chance to serve as the delegate, I would encourage you to do so. It's probably about a 3-hour block of time, give or take, and it was an honor to serve on your behalf. Any questions or follow-up?
But the Office of School Safety, is that funded anymore? I thought that wasn't in the biennium budget.
But they added money to you to fund it on an annual basis. Yep. So the long-term sustainability of the office is still in question.
And I believe that's actually up for discussion this week in one of the houses.
Yeah, it's been funded an additional year, and that's it right now. And they've kind of patched that together, but longer term conversations and solutions are needed.
Same staffing level or at that greatly reduced?
Same staffing.
And with that, my report is concluded. We will now move on to the second reading and or action to approve policies. Mr. Morse.
Yeah.
So I probably have, you didn't read the statement.
Yeah.
Great. It is recommended that the school board approve policy 0164.3 virtual meetings. Agenda, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Wills. Any updates or overview on this item? More policy co-chairs.
So, and again, I still don't have anything that my computer's giving me. So other than what was sent, yeah, no, I can pull that up. I just don't know the order. It's okay. What we worked on with this is, first of all, to know that this is a local policy of our own, which has now switched numbers. This is about what should we do when we're meeting virtually. This is not about turning all meetings into virtual meetings, just in reference to a message we received earlier today from the community. So what we worked on was we made actually quite a few changes since the last time we looked at this. And the significant reason for those changes is that we wanted to make it possible to have meetings using the virtual format. I didn't feel like in today's world that someone had to be sitting in Fisher in order to have those meetings. That much of this, as far as we know, and correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who've been on the board longer, much of this was to try to address what was needed as far as virtual meetings during COVID.
Entirely.
Okay. So, but we think that it's important to have a policy around virtual meetings and to have the capacity to hold virtual meetings. Some examples of that are when, 2 or 3 board meeting members want to, are assigned a task to get together to plan something, and that making that fit into the hours of the day that are open at Fisher is complicated. So we can utilize our virtual capacities this way. But we also want to make sure that these are going to happen in structured and systematic ways. So we thought keeping the policy was important, but the piece of having people have to sit in Fisher in order to have them. What we also want to make sure is that so that was one of the pieces of it. We also want to be really clear about the importance of a virtual meeting happening, that it be accessible to the public. So open the meeting laws still matter when you're having a virtual meeting, even if it's just 2 members of the board. So we tried to clarify that. Otherwise, we took out a lot of the complexity that we thought, and Eric is now, I think, confirming that we thought was put in order to adjust from what were all in-person meetings during COVID. So just clarifying, and in some places there was a lot of language, like in D, that it was better covered where we already have a policy on it. So we took out the quorum description and just made it a quorum is the same as any other meeting. The idea that we would conduct business in the same way. So a lot of the things we took out were really specific to what would happen in a virtual meeting, making it somewhat different from how we hold our meetings. But again, I just really do want to be clear that this is not proposing a new approach to having all meetings be virtual, but rather it's about what do we do when we need to schedule or the work and efficiency of the board is enhanced by being able to have a virtual meeting when no one is able to be either in the building or we don't want someone to have to come. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And it's really there to make sure that we have that open to meetings virtually, just for real clarity, that the link has to be published as part of the meeting notice. We have to make sure that happens. There are times when we're going to have technology issues, and that may mean that a meeting can't happen if something isn't put together quite right. But in general, hopefully this will help our process going forward. So,
Any board comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoik,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
yes,
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes. The policy 0164.3 virtual meetings passed. Thank you very much. Next up is second reading to approve and or action to approve policy 0166.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 0166. And I so move. Agenda, I'm sorry, and I so move.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you, Ms. Harmer-Rowland. Should we go does the board have any questions on, like, maybe we'll roll through and see if the board has any questions. Otherwise, we'll,
I'm going to stay on this one. So
Yes.
the change was to and or as requested. In the very first sentence, you all requested it to be and or, and we changed it. We agreed. We thought that was a good change.
seeing no questions from the board, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris, Dr. Hoik,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes. School board policy 0167.5 has been approved. Thank you. Next up, second reading and or action to approve 0167.6 email public records.
okay, 6.5 was, we did 3.
And I'll do, any questions or comments from the board on this one?
We skipped one.
Skip, you have to do 167.5. We did 0166.
Oh, sorry, my
That's
apologies.
the one I said there were no changes to.
01, so second reading and or action to approve policy 0167.5.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 0167.5 use of electronic mail, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Wills. Any board questions or comments on this one? This one seems pretty straightforward as well.
We changed what we were asked to change, so straightforward.
Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoik,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes. 0167.5 use of electronic mail passes. Next up, 0167.6 email public records. Ms. Hammer-Rowland. Ms. Wills?
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 0167.6 email public records, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Hammer-Rowland and Ms. Wills. Any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoik,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
yes,
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes, and that item passes as well. Next up is policy 0175, association memberships. Ms. Wills?
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 0175 association membership, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hoig. Any questions or comments on this one?
do you need me to review what it was that was a question taken back to two, or just want to go to your questions?
That maybe you can answer my question.
Yeah.
So this one, I thought we were a little bit confused about like the scope of what we would
Right.
need. for.
And that's what we worked on the language with. So the big change here is related to district matters. That was the clarification language that we came up with.
That includes something like a PTO, PTA.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we discussed some examples, and that was an example that was asked that we looked at and we decided we thought that would, it's not that you can't do it. It's just making communication that you have been asked and that you would like to do it. But some educational group unrelated to the Wauwatosa School District. then you don't need to.
No other questions? Thanks you for doing the work to make sure that that was clear. Please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Baker,
Yes. And association memberships passes. I'm excited about this. The policy committee is getting through a lot of stuff. Thank you for your diligence to all these. Dr. Worley, I'm going to ask Ms. Willis to read it because she's got this in front of
I have
her.
nothing still.
Ms. Willis?
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 8325, receipt of legal documents by district employees, and I so move.
May I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Hammerall.
So the clarification here, there's a question about the process of notification. So we try to make that a little clearer. Immediate notification by phone or in person.
Any comments or questions from
One other thing I was going to share is someone had asked about email, and it was made clear to us that formal serving would not come by email. It's going to come probably by a person walking up to the staff member at their car, or outside a building. So that's why we elected to do the phone or in person.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Morris, Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Ms. Willis, Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Baker,
Yes. And policy 8325, receipt of legal documents passes. Next up is second reading or action to approve policy 8420, school safety. Ms. Wills?
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 8420, school safety, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hammer-Rowland.
So we didn't do what was asked by Ms. Heimer-Roland. And I just want to give some clarification. You had asked that the last list be kept in the policy. And the discussion went as follows. We can still talk about this more, but there was some concern, first of all, that a lot of that is already covered, and feel free to correct me, already covered in administrative guidelines. And some of those things, what you're actually going to do with them, you don't actually want it to be public information. Like it's public, but you don't want to make it like super easy to find necessarily just from a school safety. And we want to remind the board that, you know, there is part of what's going to happen with this that's getting into its cycle is those updates on school safety. And I think it's August.
I think we landed on August as bringing those safety plans forward, which we'll also have to be careful about how much information is shared publicly, right? There are certain levels of safety information you don't share for good reason. But this list could be 5 pages long as well when it comes to all the components that we may have in there, as well as our safety audit that we'll be receiving soon may lead to additional items, but know that we intend to have a process every August to bring those forward. So you'll actually be seeing them more regularly than you have in the past.
So entertain discussion if there was something else that wording that you'd rather have us do, or if you want us to go back and contemplate this more, if you're satisfied with where we landed on, given the advice of the experts that we could access.
Hearing any motion to, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Baker,
Yes, the school safety policy passes. Next up, competitive food sales, policy 8550.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 8550, competitive food sales, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Amaral.
Okay, so once again, I'll make this really quick. We weren't able to give you everything you asked for, and that has to do with state law. So it is actually what is in here is what we can do. It's 30 minutes before, which was asked for school. It's not something that we can do. The law actually is from midnight until just after lunch. And it's federal law, I think, right? It's the food requirements. Comes from the initiatives around healthy eating and healthy food. Not to say that bake sales, I suppose if the bake sales become carrots, maybe they could do it, but that is the restriction. So we've gone and expanded it as much as we can at this point.
Any other board questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoig,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessa Banger.
Yes, and that policy passes. Next up, first reading of a couple policies. The first is policy 5120.01, assignment within district for non-resident students. So again, no actions being taken on these, but the next two policies are first readings. And I'm going to learn how to pronounce a new word this evening, everyone.
Oh, we're not at that one yet. Yes,
We're not.
So just as background, we did just pass some changes to this in earlier this fall, in the fall, and there was a request that there be more from a community member, there'd be more clarity about preference in terms of resident versus non-resident assignment and how that happens. So we get this one.
Yes, we got this one.
It's green. There it is. Okay, so the green at the top, after all resident student applications for interdistrict transfers are processed, then the following rules will guide the assignment of the non-resident students. So before there wasn't any mention of resident students in this policy at all. It's a policy about non-resident, but the ask was for clarity about where residents fit into this and to make clear that they have the first round. And that's actually what's practiced. I mean, that was already being reflected in practice in the district. This isn't new. It's just making it more clear to the public and policy.
Board questions or comments on this? Ms. Emerald?
For letter E, it says because the middle school attendance area is not congruent with the high school attendance area, students may request a transfer. But in the bullet points above, it specifies which high school or middle school and high school that those students would go to. So I don't know if that was just left over from recommendation.
So Longfellow students are assigned to two different locations.
West and east.
Not for
McKinley.
non-resident though.
For non-resident, all students are assigned
Whitman.
to Whitman and the West.
Mhm.
Understood.
So I think you're right. That probably goes to the resident. 5120, the other. Yeah.
Yes. The original.
The original, yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
So can you say again what you would like it to see? So you're suggesting that they can't transfer from internally, even if they're assigned to Whitman?
No, I think what she's saying is E isn't aligned with points B and C.
Striking E.
May I? And I'm trying to understand, Ms. Heimer, where you're going. So B and C are articulating a path. So if a student who is a non-resident were at an elementary school, that is the path that they would take. My understanding of E is, so say we have a current 8th grade student who, for whatever reason, unique circumstances, is requesting an intra-district transfer, that at that period, that would govern the decision. So right now, for example, Longfellow has 160 more students. So per policy, we're often denying because of space, because of that type of line in policy.
You said that so much better. That's what I was trying to say, is that you could in.
Unless
No?
I'm missing
You're-
a concern.
Yeah, I
think you're saying two different things. You're talking about enrollment numbers, like how many students attend a school, and you're talking about what school they came from. So I think you're both saying true things.
Yeah.
I think what maybe would clarify it is if you just struck on part E, because the middle school, that first part up to the comma, just struck that and then just say, students may request a transfer between the middle schools as long as there is space available in the school and grade request.
That's clearer.
It's clear. Thank you.
Professional.
Miss the policy committee, Dr. Roy. I think you missed the policy committee.
Love it.
Yes, that's what this is.
Yes.
Other changes?
Okay.
Let's move to first reading of policy 8451. Pediculosis,
Pediculous?
head lice.
Ridiculous. So, just by background, I want you to understand that we've developed this with, Luke Pinion's office, but, very appropriately, he's done a lot of consultation with the district nurses. So did you want to speak to?
Sure. This is in alignment with current practice as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is how we've been practicing. They have a great white paper about head lice or pediculosis, and we are in alignment with that practice as well as the DPI. So we really had our nurses take a look at this and draft it accordingly.
And we wanted you to know that because there's a lot of options that are offered because districts do a lot of different things. And we anticipate that some people might find how we're doing this interesting, but we want you to know that it is the recommended approach from the medical community. At least from the pediatrics, American Pediatric Association.
I noticed we have the reference at the end for legal from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Should we include somewhere in there in that our language that we've added to the top where the recommendation comes from, so that's more clear, so that there's not confusion for people like, where are you getting this? And having to go to Mr. Pinion and saying clearly, and that is recommendation from the American
Pediatrics
Association.
Not because Luke said so.
That's what my email says.
I don't know if we could list that under legal if it hasn't gone through legal, but we think of a way to.
We could bring it back to policy committee to discuss. I think, the research in the white paper I was referencing is from the AAP. But we can ask doctors, if it's appropriate to cite that. But I would imagine if we're citing some of the research right from the actual white paper, it may be appropriate.
Appreciate that we are following science and not hysteria.
Seeing no other comments or questions on this one, thank you very much for your collaborative work on this item. It is 7:06 PM. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoig,
Yes.
Ms. Willis,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer, Dr. Jessup Banger.
Yes. And at 7:06 PM, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for a efficient meeting this evening. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.